It's interesting you asked that because I was just actually talking to her mother about that recently. She said, "You've always been a rebel. You never asked for permission. You always asked for forgiveness on the back end, and I think that's carried through my whole life."
You're listening to the Red Couch Rebels, a safe, comfy space for vulnerability and self-growth. I'm Jenny.
And I'm Erin.
We are seekers and self-advocates.
Yeah, we're not your doctors.
Or your therapists.
No, we're just fellow seekers on our own journeys of self-discovery.
Explore your inner rebel with us.
Let's sink in. Today we have my brother, Scott Marschall, coming in the Red Couch to join us. I want to thank you, first of all, for showing up and being the brave first male on our show. I know we have men out there listening, and we've heard that you weren't feeling maybe like you should be in our private space with back conversations. We don't want you to feel that way. So I'm really grateful that you're willing to come on and share your story with us. And then you get to meet Jenny as well. I was just saying this morning, I have two people I really love and care about and I'm close to. Isn't it always awkward when you first bring them together?
Two worlds collide.
Two worlds collide. So I'm excited for today.
Happy to be here, and thanks for having me.
It's great to meet you too, Scott.
Oh, you too.
I've heard so many wonderful things. And
They're all lies, I'm sure. So, yeah.
No, my brother and I are similar in some ways and also very different in some ways. So I'm excited to explore your rebel story with you because I see you also as a rebel. And where that has led us in our lives is in different directions. And then we kind of came back together. So I would love to, first of all, ask you, well, okay, here's the tricky part. My brother does not remember much of our childhood. So what is your first rebel memory? I always like to start with that one because it feels like this acknowledging point of there's a voice inside of you that's different than what the world is telling you.
It's interesting you asked that because I was just actually talking to her mother about that recently. She said, "You've always been a rebel. You never asked for permission. You always asked for forgiveness on the back end, and I think that's carried through my whole life."
Really?
Everybody that's close to me would probably agree with that. But no, it's like you said, I don't, for whatever reason, I don't remember a lot of my childhood, but I remember sneaking out of the house late at night, to go hang with friends, and
I was a bit of a partier.
Yeah, a little bit. I had that phase of my life, and it's really hard to say. It's just like anytime I was told to do something in my mind, I just have a trigger in there that says, "Go prove that you can do the opposite."
Like a limitation.
Yeah, the limitation part of it, and so that's always been, no matter what venue I'm in, as soon as somebody tries to confine me, I'm like, I want to get away from that.
Spark something in you.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
Do you recall when you first felt that?
Again, see, this is what we talk all the time about. What are your childhood memories? And I have a few that I remember, but I would say the first one is just picking up and probably leaving where we grew up on Black and saying, "Hey, I'm going to go to a bigger city, Milwaukee." And that in and of itself, when you look at most of our family, stayed in the local area.
Right.
And to go somewhere else that was different, I think that was probably my first foray into going and doing something different.
Yeah, going off to college.
Went off to college, went to school down in Milwaukee, and then always had planned to go down there, get my education, and come back home and, be successful, in my mind, a successful business person back home and stay close to my roots. And then when I moved to Milwaukee, I just ended up getting a job down there out of school, and, subsequently we moved to an even bigger city since, and bigger changes and things that a lot of people told me, "Sure you want to do that, right? That's scary." That's why I want to do it. It's scary. I want to be a thrill seeker and risk taker and go ahead and do it and make sure it's calculated. But it's been a fun ride.
Yeah.
And
well, when you moved you kind of glossed over that aspect of like moving to Virginia. That was a big deal because Kylie was 2? Because
She was
Cassidy
two.
was Cassidy was in utero yet, right?
Yes.
Like when you did the move. So like they were mom and dad's only grandchildren at the time, and there was probably some feelings of hesitation when you brought that up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are hesitations, obviously, because you're married at that point. You're not going to make that decision on your own. Fortunately, I had a wonderful wife, Christy, that was very supportive of us taking the leap. We, that was 17 years ago now that we picked up and we moved across the country. Brought our 2-year-old baby in utero, so the only 2 grandbabies on both sides of the family. And we came and sat down with everybody and said, hey, guess what? We're moving away to part of the country where we don't know anybody, and we're going to start a new life because we don't want to, live life wondering what if. And for me, I'm a super competitive person and driven, and, there was an opportunity that came up to be able to go with somebody who believed in me in a different part of the country. And
so I guess I never asked that. What was the catalyst for that? What did that feel like in you when the opportunity showed up? Did you recognize it right away? Did you have your own hesitation? So walk us through what that experience was of the opportunity of going out there.
Yeah. And I think even before that, it would probably be, everybody has unique career paths. For me, I went to school to be a fun accountant. Oxymoron there, but
this is how we're different.
Exactly. So I'm a numbers guy. I was just telling Erin this morning how much I love getting into spreadsheets.
That's his flow and his bliss is being in spreadsheets.
And as I reflect on that, I'm like, it's when you're really good at something.
Yes.
It's easy to get into your flow and be in the zone, right?
Yes.
As you're doing things. But I started my career in that, and then I ended up doing that for about 4 years in public accounting, and then ended up leaving and going to work for one of my clients, which is a big insurance company. And I worked, and that's where I met my wife. And, we were both corporate employees. And after a few years, I just, I wanted more for our life. I wanted more optionality. And so I found myself starting side businesses. Like at night, I'd work my normal day job, and then I'd start side business.
What side business?
They weren't successful. That's probably why I was open to them at all. I think it was selling some sort of vitamins and then some sort of air purifiers, and it was just this dabbling into, this. How do we get to financial freedom? And how do we? I don't know. It just our parents provided for family of 6, in a very good way, but there were things and times where, looking back, it's probably a good thing we didn't get everything we wanted, right? But that actually motivated me to say, I don't want to ever have to say no to something for financial reasons and for being competitive. And I always believed that I would be successful in whatever I did. So God gave me that gift, and it's something that I love. And so I guess as we went through all of that, I just kind of hit a point in my life where geeky accountant, right? I had a spreadsheet of all my raises for the next 30 years. If I stay in these positions, here's what my pension will be. Here's everything. I had it all planned out. I am a planner. That is that's literally my business is planning. And that eventually got a little boring thinking about that. And it wasn't going to get me to where I wanted to go fast enough. And then I started surrounding myself with some people that I met so I worked in the home office of the company, and then there were people in the field that were all business owners. And as I spent time with those people, they were dynamic, they were exciting, there were no limits. I'm like, I want to do this in 10 years. They're like, why don't you do that in a year? Like, what are you talking about? It was just so foreign to them that, when I step back and is that real? Can you really do something like that fast? Of course you can. You just have to, take the risk, and you have to, leverage your skills and do it in a unique way. So that's where the opportunity came up for one of my first main mentors in my life, that he gave me an opportunity to move to Washington, D.C. and said, yeah, why don't you move on out here and try something you've never done before in a place where you don't know anybody other than me. And that sounds like a great idea. Right, let's go ahead and do it. But that's literally how it felt. But I saw the life, and I saw the energy, and I saw, the leadership traits in him that made me that pulled me into that.
Yeah.
And attracted to that.
Yeah. And the potential of not knowing what that spreadsheet's going to look like in 30 years, that had to be knowing our father. There had to be something in there that was hard you had to tease out, because my dad worked at a factory, Mercury Marine, for 43 years. So like consistency and predictability and stability. Yes, you need to make sure that all these things are accounted for and you take the proven path. So that was there something in that there?
There is, but I think even more for me when I think back, we grew up outdoorsmen with my father and uncle and cousins and everybody. That was a family thing that we did, but I loved the idea of just walking in the woods and not knowing what you're going to see. Right? Or even just, sitting on the stand and being there for 6 hours because if I wait 2 more minutes, something cool might happen, right?
Yeah.
And that exploration and delving into the unknown has always been attractive to me. And so I guess that's what we're reflecting on it. That's probably something I saw within the career track as well, and what that could mean for my career, but more importantly, in my family. And things that we could do, I think the first time I got on an airplane, I was 23 years old. And, I was in a small plane and we landed in a cornfield in Waverly, Iowa. And it's just like, wow, this is something I've never done before. So then your mind starts to open, and this is a big world. There's so much out there to be able to see. Unfortunately, my wife and I talked for a long time about it because it's scary. She's very close to her family. For us to all pick up and move away, it was very, very hard decision, I know, for her and for me. But I obviously had the excitement, but she was going to be going out there and then to no longer be working, for a company, but working at home and taking care of the family, which she's a wonderful woman. And she'll tell you that's not her gig, but she did it, and she did it really well. And so I'm very thankful for her to have the trust and belief in me early on in our marriage to say, let's go do that.
Mm-hmm. What was the conversation? Like the planner side of you, and, it seems like that explorer risk, wanting that. But like when I think of planners and risk, there's usually, I don't know, I guess not always a distinction or like a polar opposite. But what was that conversation with your wife?
I think right or wrong, a lot of it was driven from me by money and the ability to be able to do things, right? And being so competitive, that's always been a driving force for me. But in talking to her, I pulled out that spreadsheet I created and said, this could be one life, or it could be a totally unknown that we could do something that we maybe never even dreamed about, or us being able to do, or our families being able to do. And that part of it, at the end of the day, we said, we don't want to live life wondering what if.
Yeah.
Looking back and saying, what if we would have taken that chance? And I think we both have belief in both of ourselves that we were going to figure it out one way or the other. And honestly, moving out there, which was scary to, not give up 2 salaries and go out to start a business where you don't know anybody. It's extremely motivating to put yourself in that position. Because I had people that said, we'll see you back in a couple of years. No way.
You had no other choice. You had a wife.
You burn all the bridges and you just say, we have to make this happen.
Yeah.
There's no failure. There's no option.
Was there fear at all?
Of course, there's fear. But along with the fear is excitement.
Sure.
Because whenever I put myself in the fear zone, that excitement part comes out too.
What's the self-talk around that? Because I feel like we've kind of talked about it a little bit with the episode with Ginny about I don't need, what was it? It was about faith and fear. So if you have faith, then you don't have to worry about fear. But it was obviously a little bit.
If you don't have any fear, you don't really need the faith. So
that's right.
Need the faith when the fear shows up.
Yeah.
And you're trying about faith in yourself and each other to figure it out. And you have always been a high achiever, like good grades. You always had a good group of friends. He was in sports. So like when you already have these successes that you're standing on, you did well in college, right? You did well in your business. So you have all these successes. So he had the proof, I think, too,
enough
that
of
you-
a story in my mind.
Yeah,
Probably
you've
that
proven it to yourself.
even if I had failed, then I found a way to overcome it in the past. I think
Yeah.
every time you do that, it's like, how big can I fail and still come out the other side?
Did you
and
feel
still
that
do
way
it?
even at that point?
Oh, sure.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's
I mean-
I had to get much older before I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from, but that's something I look. If it didn't work, then we would figure something else.
Yeah.
Well, we're young.
Yeah.
We have our whole life to live.
Yeah.
right?
And the failure didn't mean anything about you. I feel like when I think about what my younger years, probably early 20s,
Yeah.
that failure was, and it's all self-talk, but I know others struggle with it too. How do you distinguish the difference? I did this and it failed versus I was a failure, right?
I think there's learning and success in every failure. And even at a young age, I believe that I learned a way that didn't work versus I succeeded in finding a way that didn't work versus failing at something. And if you do that enough times, eventually you're going to run into the thing that does work.
Mm-hmm. That's why I think it took me so much longer to get there, because I did go to the I'm a failure. When I would fail, I made it a identity, right? And then I had a role in that. And I had to see in my life that over the long term that I would get back up and then I would do another thing, right? So like I needed that much more repeated and maybe a longer process of not getting up as quickly, but I did learn that eventually. Yeah. So something that I thought was thinking on the other day when I was thinking forward to this conversation, you and I had very different experiences. I know you remember some of like high school, middle school.
Yeah.
So you were talking about how right or wrong it was about money and success. And we've talked about how when like our friend groups going through school had played such a large role in like where we went off, what directions we went. So like Scott went to a different middle school. This is what I'm pinning it back to.
Okay.
You went to Tyson, where it was a more wealthy school district where the kids were going. So your friend group came out of Tyson mostly, right? And went through high school. And I had the same friend group from elementary school all the way through high school. But they had much less than we did. And your friends' families had much more than you did. So I've seen that for a while, that could have been a motivator for you to be like, this is something I want to attain, right?
I've never thought about that until you just said that. And,
Really?
No. But as I think back to some of the people that I saw and where they lived, or,
what their parents
their
did for
parents were
work.
attorneys or
Yeah.
doctors or whatever that was, and I can maybe connected those types of careers with those types of lifestyles and opportunities. I have an uncle, that I was really looked up to. It was
Yeah.
very successful in the accounting world and all of
Yeah.
that. All the reasons I went into accounting. And it was just, I don't know, like being in sports, I go ahead, there's just something about being around people that have won, right? And that have consistently won. And what have they done to be able to do that? So it was always attractive to be able to put yourself in an environment like that. So I had not thought about, all the way back to middle school.
Yeah.
You just brought that back into my mind. That hasn't been there for a long, long time.
So my friend group didn't have more than we had in the physical, but they had community, like very strong community. So my best friend she had a single mom. So like they were a tight unit. Not that they didn't have their issues, but they were a tight unit. And I looked at their love and their bond between each other, and I was like so envious of that. And then I had another friend that lived in a multi-generational household, like grandparents and aunts and uncles and 5 kids. And like, it was like this huge, chaotic, loving space, right? So when I was around my friends, I was craving what I felt I didn't have was the community and the bond, because we kind of all did our own thing. We were each supported by our parents, but I didn't feel what I was feeling in those households. So like you went after what you saw in your friends' houses, and I went after what I saw that I didn't have in my friends. Isn't that crazy? And the next piece was your sports being competitive, like, and going towards that. I was in drum corps. So we didn't compete with each other. Like we tried out, you made it in a certain spot on the drum corps. And then as a team, we competed against other people. So it wasn't every week we were trying to kick someone off the court so we could get on. We were all always on the court. So we had this cohesive community. So we had very different experience in our sports and in our friend homes. And I love how like I could see then how that like branched us. Like I went towards community, I went towards home and bond and what I was craving, and you went towards what you admired of.
Yeah, and as I'm sitting here thinking, I think, I was very insecure growing up as well. Just, overweight, compared to other kids, and maybe not as social, or weren't in the right friend groups. And that was something that, I saw sports as a way to try to connect with those people that I wanted to be with as well, to be, included in that group. And I was definitely way more of an introvert back then. And since I've taken some of these other directions in life, I've had to learn how to become an extrovert. I tell people I'm an introvert, and there's no way you're an introvert, but
That's a spectrum, like anything
it
else.
really is.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking before we jumped on here. Like, I feel like, there definitely is a difference between the two, and some people are very much one way or the other. But I also think, depending on the person, you can ebb and flow. And for me, it's more about how I need to recharge my battery. And that's what we were talking about.
Yeah.
I love being around people. And then I get to a certain point where I'm like, oh, battery drained. I need to be by myself. And that's when I kind of hurdle.
Yes.
Or turtle. And then recharge.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a personality assessment we use as we interview people, and that's one of them that very clearly it says, like, they talk about your battery life, right? And some people have a really long battery life, and they can just, be like a legal clerk that could go through and read books for 10 hours on end, and they're fine. Like, they keep doing it. And for me, I can go hard, and I go really hard, but then like you said, I got to totally detach. So it's like quick hits, get out. But yeah, no, it's been interesting. This is interesting too, because, Erin, as we've reconnected, I've learned how much of a deep thinker you are. And that's something that has been really exciting for me, to kind of meet you in a different way on that side, and be able to, I'm always looking around at who do I want to be like, and what are those personality traits that I want to, have embedded in me. And that deep thinking is one of those things. And I always feel out of my depth as I've even watched previous speakers on the podcast here. They're like, what do you want to talk to me about? I'm not going to be able to bring anything to the table here, because I don't think that deeply about some of those things. But, it's been the risk part, and the rebel part, I can connect to that. And because I do feel like I've always been a rebel on that side.
Well, Mom once said, we can cut this out, yeah. So Scott and I went through decades of not talking to each other. Like, we coexisted for holidays, but we did not talk. And I remember a really good friend of mine, Mike Lewis, actually helped me through a lot of that, and really made me look at it, because it was like on a shelf. Like, yes, he's my brother, but he's on a shelf. And in those years, Mom multiple times said to me, she said, but you're so much like your brother. Like, you guys would have such an amazing relationship if you could just see how similar you are, because you're saying you're not a deep thinker, but that's how Mom correlated us, is that we both were curious. And I think curiosity for me definitely is a rebel trait. So when I call her up and talk her ear off for hours, she saw that correlation. And then it was in 2019 that we reconnected. And interestingly, like, it was you showing up to protect me. And that was like the first thing that when we reconnected, you showed up to stand up for me. And I was like, what? Like, Scott is going to stand up for me? But you saw an injustice and you were like, no, you're not going to treat Erin like that. That is not okay. And I hadn't felt that. I didn't feel that from Dad, and I didn't really feel that a lot when we weren't connected. So, like, to have you show up to protect me opened me. Like, I was like, okay, he's off the shelf now. He's in my life, and I want to explore this. And then the next moment was that I really remember was a phone call that you made to me in your vulnerability. So you both showed up to have my back and to tell me you love me. And then you were able to show up and say, I need someone. I need to share what I'm going through with you. And I think you're the person that can hear this, right? So those were the moments that for me, like, just completely cracked my heart open to you. And since then, we have like been able, we just get to know, it's like we didn't even know each other. It's like we're siblings, but we're strangers. And I think of our relationship often when I'm talking to people who are in estranged relationships. Like, never, you don't have to sit there waiting on the edge of your seat but never give up hope, because you never know. It might be 15 years down the road that you're both in different places, you're different people, and you're able to meet each other again, and you're able to come back together. And it for me, like, I feel like he's teaching me like what he's been working on his magic, and I'm sharing with him what I've been working on in my magic. And yeah, it's been so helpful because we've been out there in the world learning all these different lessons. And now we get to support each other in that.
And we didn't really, grow up in a family where we sat down and talked about personal growth.
Oh, no.
Right?
No.
So that was kind of, and I just don't think our parents grew up. Maybe they did, but I don't think they grew up in that world either. And then I was thrust into Virginia where everything was about personal growth. How are you growing? What's your mindset? How do you train your mind to, be a big thinker and not have any limitations and align your behaviors, and your actions so that you can actually achieve what you want to. And that, to me, was a very powerful thing because to me, work ethic is just such a huge thing. That's one of the best gifts that I think our parents gave us, was to always just, you can outwork a lot of people, a lot of challenges in life. You can outwork it. And I think that is something that has helped me through my career and through a lot of things, to just outwork it. Now I'm thinking about how do you not just necessarily be smarter, right? It's not work harder, it's work smarter and be more efficient with what you're doing and more open and more vulnerable. I mean, growing up as a guy, a lot of times, at least for being in competitive sports and everything, it's like, you got to be the tough guy, right? I can get through anything, right? I'm a big, imposing guy already. So, like, that kind of aligned with my body. And I'm like, okay, I guess this is who I am. And in some ways that helps, but in a lot of ways that really hurt. Like, even my progression as a leader and doing other things and, the whole fake it till you make it thing.
I
definitely faked it. Oh my goodness. I did that for a while. I feel like I'm still doing it now, right? Because I definitely have not made it and I have a lot to learn and grow. And but that's been an interesting thing to come to the realization that the vulnerable part you talked about, you're actually you can be a better leader, you can be a better, more connectable person when you are vulnerable. And that's just, all the guys I know, that's hard to do. But I've shared with you recently, I've had some really cool discussions with people when you open up and you're vulnerable and it allows them to be vulnerable. And you're like, wow, I'm almost 50 years old. And I haven't had conversations like that in my entire life. Now, man, I missed out on so many years. I wish I would have known this 30 years ago and how different that might have, I wouldn't take back anything that we've done. But hopefully I've had another 30 or 40 years to actually be able to live in that world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But you've helped me be more vulnerable on that side and have a different perspective in the way that my logical mind works. You have logic, but you also can blend it with the emotional side, and that's the spiritual side. And that's been really interesting for me because my normal reaction a lot of times when you say something, it's like, nah, it's not right. And then I think about it for like a day or two. Like, man, it's just right. Right? And I just haven't thought about it like that. And
no, like,
that's
any
awesome.
baby sister in the world listening right now is happy that
I was curious, actually. I was going to ask before, what is the age dynamic?
He's the oldest,
okay,
and I'm the youngest.
I had 3 sisters, so I lived in a house with 4 women, and then now I have my wife and 2 daughters and 4 female dogs. So I am the only testosterone in any of the houses I've ever lived in other than my dad. And yeah, so I've not lived in a world where you really, I don't know, I would have thought maybe now as I reflect on that might have made me more able to communicate better with women, but I actually don't think you just said we didn't talk for 10 years. I have another sister, didn't talk for 10 years. I just happened to be here meeting, and it went awesome, right? And courage to go try to start that up again, right? And a lot of that courage came from our ability to reconnect and be able to, have what we have now.
Do you mind? There's so many things that you guys are saying. I'm like, I should be taking notes here because I want to come back to it.
Okay. Do you need a piece of paper?
I'm good. So to your comments about, stopping, reflecting, and then coming back, like, oh, she's right, right? Mm-hmm. I was just listening to something the other day. I think it was another podcast, and they were saying the more we just slow down and be present, like there's a correlation to being more compassionate and more caring and showing up in more love. I found that interesting. Like their point was the people that are in hurry mode are just thinking about themselves. And the more you slow down, the more you're more present, the more you just see and experience maybe more of the emotional sides of things, the more that compassion and love and kindness shows up. So I guess I haven't really, I heard it. I haven't slowed down enough to reflect on it on my own, but there was a little bit of that I heard you say, right? Stopping, reflecting, slowing yourself down and really thinking about it versus just like hearing it, pushing it away.
I think so much of it is you're molded by the people that are your leaders in your life, right? So I think back to my coaches that I have. They were hard drivers, just get it done, like that type of mentality. And so then in my mind, I created a sense that that's the type of leader that I need to be respected and to do that. Even dad at times, it was like, hard iron fist on some things, especially with me, maybe being the only boy. But then being exposed to other types of leadership styles over the years, it's been, look at the guy with the silver hair and, just very humble and kind and doesn't have to say much and everybody just respects him. I'm like, that's the type of person I want to be. I have a long way to go to get there. Because I was probably the exact opposite of that, right? Being the, more domineering type personality on that side. And slowing down, like you said, it's hard. My empathy scale, I was probably like a -1 out of 10, right? Like that just was not something that I ever really thought about. And that was more of a selfish trait looking back on that. Now I definitely appreciate that. But that's something that's, I've had even recently, we'll probably get into that, but I've had a lot of life changes here recently that have had made me step back and say, who am I? Who do I want to be? Who do I want to be for me? Who do I want to be for my family? As a father, as a husband, brother, all the different relationships. So early on when we started connecting, you kept talking about how for you, it's really about love and connection. And every week, what you said comes back into my mind. And I'm thinking about how that plays into my life and how much more important that is. You spent my life trying to be super successful and by whatever metrics I had at that time. And now I even went through our discussion successes measured in so many different ways. It's not just financial or anything. And I haven't been 50. I haven't achieved everything I wanted on the financial side, but I've achieved, I won't even say way more than I expected, but just a lot. And multiple houses, all of that. And Gala Day, I'm like, and out here, who cares?
Yeah. At the end of the day, what really matters? What
really matters? It's love and connection. And being the tough guy, that's sappy. That's a little thing like, guys don't talk about that. But like, it really is, And I'm still a baby when it comes to like learning about these types of things. So some of it's kind of raw for me. It's like hard to be open with it because you still want to be looked at, respected, and admired. You question people. If people look at you that way because of who you were, if you change, will they still look that way? But then you're missing out on how many other people might look at you differently.
Yeah.
And
how do you look at yourself?
And how do you look at yourself?
Yeah. Because that guy with gray hair that is quiet and his words hold power, he knows who he is and he's centered in who he is. right? So he's not trying to prove anything to anyone.
Yep. For me, it was growing up, I wanted to prove to my dad.
Great. Our dad passed on a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
That was a hard thing for me because my whole life I just wanted him to be. He wanted us all. You have to go to college. You have to live a better life than we've lived, right? So taking those steps and doing those things, a lot of what I was doing, I was trying to prove to him that we could do this. I could do what he challenged us to do. And, hard thing for me was I just, my whole life, I just wanted to hear him say he's proud of me.
Did he?
Not that I remember.
Do you think he felt it, though?
I think he felt it.
Yeah.
I hope he felt it.
I'm sure he did. I didn't know.
I think the dynamic that we went through when I moved away, I started finding success, and it kind of turned to resentment a little bit, I think, because of the success we found, and it was different. And maybe it's who I was when I was doing that. I don't know. But that was a hard thing.
Resentment or envy?
I mean, I can't speak to that. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't either.
Because we weren't deep talkers. We talked about hunting, fishing, or sports, right? It's never, surface level.
Yeah.
With so many of my relationships with people, it's been that way. And now it's just so cool to go to that next layer of the onion.
Yeah.
And not have to be limited to what's the comfortable pieces.
Yeah. I feel like it's a slippery slope, the envy or resentment, right? I feel like if you're, and obviously I didn't know your father, but like anyone who's perhaps in that same predicament where they're looking at someone and, it's the competition piece that we talked about a couple episodes back, that idea of, can we just show up and be happy for? Mm-hmm. And I think if you really stop and notice what you're feeling, it's like, okay, this is jealousy or envy. And then if you don't really stop yourself and reflect on it, it can quickly slip into resentment.
Well, as you're talking, I'm also hearing how you honored by following the chosen path that Dad valued. You honored the sacrifices he made of giving 43 years of his life to a job he hated. And I always felt like when he would attack my choices because I didn't take the proof path, it's like he felt betrayed by me because he made those sacrifices.
Sure. It's all a mirror.
Good. When you did reach success, I wonder, it would be interesting. I don't think he would have been able to go there with us today if he was still here. But was it that he made those sacrifices and now you get to live that life? He doesn't get that life? I don't know.
Yeah, that's why I don't know if I would call it envy or I don't know if that was it or not. That's just.
We'll always have to wonder.
The web is just, there's so many different directions. I don't remember having deep discussions with our parents. They always clearly loved us. They did everything they could for us. We raised in, a good environment that encouraged us to be better. Maybe that's how we define better. And I don't think as a family we had the skills to communicate, right? There's yelling.
Oh, yeah.
And then it's crazy. Then you have kids and then you go off and you carry that with you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right? Yeah. The spanking or whatever. I'm like, who cares? I was spanked a million times growing up, right? Yeah. I think it made me who I am today, and that's okay. But I remember having the two girls. I think I spanked my girls once. I'm like, this didn't feel right. Like, that's not, it's got to be a better way. So my girls will tell you they loved the naughty chair growing up.
Dad actually used that on, I think it was me and Tracy once. So I recently just watched this video that said he was talking about, this is connected, I promise. He was talking about how him and his sister grew up in the same house, but they turned out so different. And the guy that was being interviewed, I wish I could remember his name, said that it's impossible for you to grow up in the same house. Your parents just by you being different ages. Your parents were at a different part in their parenting journey. So you had very different experiences. You're different sexes. That in itself puts you in a different parenting relationship, right? So I was the youngest, Scott was the oldest. So I was probably like 4. Tracy and I were in like a full-on battle, like beating on each other or whatever. And Dad didn't come in and spank us. He made us sit on the chair next to each other.
That was worse.
Way worse. I would have taken the spanking way quicker. And we couldn't get up from the chair until we looked at each other and said we loved each other and gave each other a hug. And it was pure torture, let me tell you. So how much it changes just in, well, how old are you now?
48.
And I'm 43, so 5 years difference. I should know this off the top of my head. I'm not a numbers girl. So, yeah, that's crazy, the difference there and how Dad evolved in that and how our needs were very different as girls, how our own mental health needs were different for each of us and how they could show up for each of us. But that 5 years is a big difference in childhood because I think we only went to school together 1 year in grade school. Like I was coming into school and you were like your last year in grade school. So I really felt detached, like we were just separate because you were always on to the next bigger thing. And I think that kind of led into part of the reason why we never got close. And then when you talk about the insecurity and how you show up, he also was the older brother. So you think of that.
The defender part of it. And that's, that's where Dad was good on that side too. Like the defender. And that's how I grew up. And that you have to be that way. And I'm not to this day, you mentioned that's how we reconnected. I'm still, if you're in my inner circle, I'll defend you to the end. Right.
The only one that can pick on you is me.
Right. That's how I say I love you. Right?
Yeah.
I won't pick on you if I don't love you. Right?
Yeah, that's in my family. Maybe it's all families. I don't know. It's been my experience. You only know when you're loved when you get like
if you're not
on,
getting
made
teased,
fun of,
then you're other manic.
Exactly.
Friendly.
Let's point that. Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely holds true.
The other day, my one brother lives about an hour away. The other one lives like 5 minutes away, and I still don't see them much. I mean, just busy lives. But the other day, I swung by the brother that lives close, and I just had this feeling of like, oh, I miss my brother. So I'm the oldest, two younger brothers, but we're like boom, 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 one right after the other, pretty much like a year, just over a year or so between each of us. But I've been reflecting a little bit and hearing the both of you talk about the sibling dynamic. It's like, how much do we really know our siblings, though? Like, without that intentionality of really connecting as adults. I mean,
Totally different.
I know. I mean, I miss my brothers and I love the time that I have with them, even though, I mean, we've had ups and downs in our relationships too, where there's been different stuff going on and we've kind of pushed away, but we've always, like for family stuff, come together. But it's just fascinating, as things happen in life, how that brings you together and talking about deeper stuff than the surface level.
Well, the stories you keep in your mind too of who they were from when you last talked to them, right? I had my story of who you were 10 years before that. Meeting with Tracy and my mom over the last couple of days, I had my story of who she was. Not that person at all. Right? Very mature, and it was just a great experience. And even right now, just so fresh with that, reflecting on that, man, that would have been such a missed opportunity not to. For me, it took a lot of courage to go, engage in that situation again, because it could turn out negative again and not know it. But in almost every time in my life when I've had the courage to do something that felt uncomfortable like that, has been a positive thing came out yet.
And your inner voice is where that decision came from. Like when we reflect back to when you started talking about making the trip, it was like something from your heart that was guiding you.
Well, that's my, I spent the last 40 years of my life not living a spiritual life. It was all just go, 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 go. And the end of last year, got to a point in my life where just, things were good, but it wasn't fulfilled. It wasn't complete, and lost some friends that were in their 40s. Cancer, and then you start reflecting on that, and maybe that's just getting older. You start thinking about some of these things and say, really, why are we here? And wasn't feeling good about a lot of things, and going down rabbit holes of, country and leaders are all corrupt, and there's a very negative place. I'd spent a lot of time trying to focus on being positive, starting to become a prepper, and all that, because I'm the one that defends, right? And even on my street, we have a fraternity out our street. All the families know each other, and a lot of my friends would be like, "Hey, if things go down, we're coming to your place because we know you got our back, right? And you're gonna take care of us." Then I had this responsibility.
Oh yeah.
And I was feeling on my shoulders. Not only do I have to take care of my family, I have to take care of other families.
Yeah.
And then there's this spiral thing that just kind of kept building up. And on top of losing some people, and I just realized, I went to church. I was invited to go to church by very close friends of ours, and for Christmas, and they did that, and Jesus just grabbed me at that time and pulled me in, and I committed to him. And I would be the first one to say that I grew up Catholic, went to CCD. I did all those things growing up. Reflecting back on that, I don't remember any of it, and I wasn't connected for me to God at that point. And my life has been, my theme for the year is hashtag 2024 best year ever. And this year has been the most amazing year of my life. And it all started with accepting God into my life and knowing that he's my savior. And I was never a religious person. So for me to say this even now is Scott would not be looked at that high, but he is opening doors for me and showing me the way and introducing me to learnings. And I've gone through 14 books. I haven't read more than 2 books my whole life. I was I feel like a child just grabbing information and spiritual connection. And the time we spend and learning how you look at it in a different way is still, because I have no ownership to it. So I'm just, learning.
I think we should pick up on this in the next episode because we're going to have a part 2.
Yeah.
So I think this is a really good point to wrap up and leave y'all hanging on a little bit of what Scott's journey has looked like in that realm. And we will be back in the next one.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Red Couch. We would love if you would head on over and subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. It helps us tremendously as we rebel against the status quo of disconnection. We need you. We appreciate you. You can also head on over to our website, redcouchrebels.com, to send us a note and explore your inner rebel with us on our online network. We'd love to see you there.